done, and Telstra not responsible for that conduct.
Right. So they did break the law, in your opinion?
Telstra broke the law by the conduct of its employees.
Definitely did.
On the material I have seen, yes.
As we'll see, scores of people inside and outside of Telstra have been involved over the years trying to stop this story in its tracks. The seeds were sown more than a decade ago when a group of ordinary Australians began to have trouble with their phones, the service provided by what was then known as Telecom. They became known collectively as the COT cases, casualties of Telstra. Skeletons in the closet, rattling from time to time in the odd media appearance, only to leap out now at the worst possible time.
All of that shows that they lied under oath, all of that we've heard today, as far as their perceptions, is here for the Minister and the Honourable Darryl Williams.
Right. When did you give that to them?
On the 4th of April 2001.
Anne Garmes is without doubt the most feisty and persistent of the COT victims.
All of these matters relate to its cover-up of the poor performance of the Telstra network, the fact that it has never met the service levels dictated by the licence, and the government knows that.
Anne Garmes has an Order of Australia, is president of the Brisbane Polo Club, and owns an upmarket gift shop in the city centre. She's a formidable woman in every sense, with the resources not only to engage Dale Smith to examine the evidence against Telstra, but 2 other legal experts who've declined to be interviewed. Retired Queensland Judge Desmond Derrington QC, in a detailed legal opinion, concludes that Telstra engaged in unconscionable conduct against Garmes under the Trade Practices Act. Associate Professor Suzanne McNichol of Monash University says the telecommunications giant abused the use of legal professional privilege to keep potentially damaging documents out of Anne Garmes' hands.
Well, I think it's cost me 15 years of my life, the most productive years of my life. It's cost me my husband's health.
It's destroyed him, hasn't it?
It's destroyed him. It's cost me a lot of my own happiness.
Anne Garmes' marathon fight against Telstra relates to 2 previous businesses. One, the celebrated theatre restaurant, the Tivoli, linked to its patrons through the nearby Fortitude Valley Exchange.
When they could get through, they told us they'd been ringing for days before and couldn't make contact with us. We reported this to Telstra, and we were well aware of the problem in Fortitude Valley, and were able to, at an early stage, identify exactly what the problem was. Telstra then wrote back, I think it was September 1991, and said there was no such problem.
As the dispute escalated, we now know Telstra did something extraordinary and illegal. It bugged Anne Garmes' phone and recorded the conversations. Not just for technical purposes, which it's entitled to do by law, but it also eavesdropped on her conversations and passed the information on to its lawyers.
They had the broadcast monitoring amplifiers on in the exchange here for 3 years, listening to every phone call we made.
When you say the amplifiers, what everyone in this joint could hear what was said?
Yes.
You've been able to find that out?
Yes, that's in my document.
The most intimate details of your phone conversation.
That's right.
Telstra employees here are listening to it.
Yes.
And here's the proof obtained years later, a confidential Telstra report to its lawyers Freehill, Hollingdale and Page. Monitoring amplifiers were used. All calls monitored were business calls, such as booking tables and seeking work. At no time were there any calls complaining of not being able to contact the Tivoli.
For most of us ordinary mortals, if we were to do that, we would be prosecuted under the legislation which governs recording devices on phones. It's a case of Telstra recording without the client's knowledge, without the party's knowledge, information, and then misusing that information for commercial purposes that have nothing to do with quality of service.
Can I ask you as the Minister what you think about Telstra bugging the phone calls of ordinary Australians and using that for their commercial advantage? What do you think about that?
Well, in principle, I certainly wouldn't approve of that occurring. But has it occurred? I
Yes,
don't
it has
know.
occurred, and I've got a document here that proves it.
Well, all right.
Would you like me to tell you about it?
No, I'd rather you take it to the police because they're the ones who deal with criminal activity.
Not only did Telstra break the law by bugging its customer, it tried, and not for the first time, to cover up the facts. Anne Garnes obtained a staggering 250,000 documents through disclosure and access to freedom of information. But the document of Freehills wasn't one of them. She eventually got that from the industry regulator, Austel.
Austel found the report, and it had been withheld under legal professional privilege from me.
It was a favoured and perfectly legal tactic of Telstra's. Mark a document, legal professional privilege, and it couldn't be used against it. Thousands and thousands of documents rendered useless by being withheld or blacked out. Graham Scorer is another of the COT cases and their designated spokesman.
I draw your attention to a document called the COT strategy. Now, the COT strategy was a document drawn up by Freehill, Hollingdale and Page as to how Telstra should go about creating legal professional privilege on documentation, and that information is no longer available to the customer when he makes an application.
And here it is, Freehills advising Telstra, the initial point of referral should always be the corporate solicitor's office, in order to bring into operation the potential protection of legal professional privilege for documentation. Freehills' Melbourne headquarters, high above Collins Street, became the nerve centre of Telstra's fight against several of the high-profile COT cases. Up to a dozen people delegated to deal with Graham Scorer alone.
So where is this exchange in relation to your building? Well, Graham, we're there.